All right, I am assuming you're all following along in your Shopsmith Lathe Duplicator instruction booklet, and we are on page 24. I'm only half joking. Inside of the instructions with the Lathe Duplicator is a simple little project that shows you to turn a candle stand where one of those operations is turning a spindle and turning it from a template that you make using the pattern that's included in the booklet, and also how to turn a faceplate turning. Now, back when this duplicator was made, there really weren't a lot of chucks being used yet. They've taken off now, but these instructions are for turning anything that you would mount on a chuck or a faceplate. And it's a slightly different setup. But before we tear this thing apart to attach that template, I want to talk just briefly about a question that somebody asked, or maybe it was an insinuation. They asked if am I turning miniatures? Is everything set up right? And I think part of that thinking came from the fact that I started with a big old chunk of cherry and turned it down to a relatively small spindle. So let's double check to make sure we have this set up right. I'll show you what could have gone wrong, and we'll determine whether or not that is, in fact, the size spindle that we were shooting for. So part of the setup of the lathe duplicator is to make sure that this center line of our template is aligned with the center line of our lathe. If this is too far forward, it will hold our cutter too far out and would result in a larger spindle. If it's too far back, obviously it would make a too small spindle. And so I thought we would go ahead and check this with a caliper. I have a digital caliper. I have it set for metric. There we go, set for metric. And I can either measure from here to the center line of my template, or I can just go ahead and measure at the bulbous point of that template. And this is saying it's 35.9 millimeters, almost 36 millimeters. And now let's measure down here. And I am, in fact, a little over 36 millimeter. So this is actually a larger spindle, slightly larger than my template is set up for. So if anything's wrong, either my template is too far forward, or I didn't extend the cutter all the way to its final depth before I started sanding. I'm perfectly happy with that. I mean, a millimeter off, that's okay for me. If I needed to adjust this, remember that our template is designed with a hole that we indexed with a dowel or with a drill bit. I can loosen these two bolts from below and I can slide this forward or back. I'm happy with where it is now, and just wanted to confirm that everything is turning as expected. I'm going to do this from the back side of the machine so you can see what's happening. I wouldn't normally do it like this, but let's get our spindle out. We can set that aside. Go ahead now and take off my drive center. And we can go ahead and remove the tailstock, since that's not going to be necessary for our faceplate turning. We'll take our template out from our spindle. We can save that for future use. And that just slides out. There are the holes that we use to index this with the drill bit. So I'm going to move this a little bit further over, and we'll determine the final position once we have our wood mounted on our faceplate. Because I'm going to be using this tool coming in from the end this way, I'm going to go ahead and remove this support here, just so it's not at all in the way. And I'm going to just mount this over on the far end of the duplicator. Just park it over here. All right, so now that we have our centers found, I'm going to attach the faceplate. But before I do that, because I've had some experience in the past of my tools catching and causing this to shift slightly on the faceplate, I like to use double-sided tape with this in addition to screws. And this is my favorite tape for this application, which is spec tape. And if I take just a couple inches of that, and I'm going to be screwing using the 3 innermost holes. So I'm going to go ahead and cover the 3 outside holes. Now, why am I choosing the innermost holes? Well, because of the profile I'll be cutting here, I don't want to risk running into the screws. And so having them a little bit more inbound makes me feel more comfortable. Just so you know, it's kind of cool in the shop, and I just had the faceplate sitting on a heater to warm it up a little bit because I want this tape to stick, and it doesn't like to stick so well to cold metals. And we'll peel. And a classic old trick here is, since Shopsmith faceplates have a 5/8 inch through bore on them, I can take a 5/8 inch brad point drill bit, pass that through the hole, align it with my cross marks here, and drop that down onto my stock. And that now positions it pretty close to my center, and then I can use my innermost holes. We're using pan head screws. I like pan head sheet metal screws. For this, I'd rather use a number 8. This is a number 6 screw, and you can see it's going to be a little bit sloppy. Yet another good reason to use the double-sided tape. And here's another place to talk about a handy little tool if you don't already have these. The original self-centering drill bit of this style is a Vix bit made by the Vix Bit Company, or the Vix Company. And these are available with a couple different sizes. This is designed for a number 6 screw. What is that? The size number 5 works for a number 6 screw. And there's a larger size here, several sizes in fact. This one is designed for a number 8 and a number 9 screw. They're pretty generic now. You can pick these up in a lot of different places. I do like the hex drive that's available with some of these, but some of these are just absolute garbage. So be careful if you find a super bargain on them. There's probably a good reason for that. And then with my Vix bit, I'm going to use this to guide me dead center on the hole in the faceplate. And this will allow me to pre-drill for my screws. Not going too far with it, but I just want to establish a really good center mark in my wood. The other thing I didn't point out is I align these so that they are not lined up with the same grain. So if I run 2 screws on the same grain line, there's a chance that I can split this. I want to prevent that. So now I just drive my screws into these 3 locations and we're good to go. Oh, where are my square drive screws? All right, with my stock mounted here, faceplate mounted onto the spindle, so I don't run out of table. I want plenty of support for my tool, and there will be a point where I'll be coming around to the side, you see. I'm going to make sure my table is moved over closer to the headstock, or headstock is moved close to the table, whichever way you want to view that. I could extend the quill out if I chose to. We'll just leave that quill right where it is because it's not going to be in the way at all. And then we'll lock the quill down. Here's a great place to remind you to do the 5-point safety check. Make sure the headstock, the table height, and the carriage, and everything is locked in place. Now I'm going to add my template. And we're going to do this again using a drill bit. And then we'll tighten these set screws down to hold the template in place. The center line there should be perfectly centered with the center line back here if everything has been done correctly. And now I'm going to bring this over and align it with the bottom of my candlestick on the template. And you can see that my bottom of my blank is not lined up with that. So now I'm going to extend my quill so that the bottom of my tool, or bottom of the blank, is in line with the tool down below. And that is where that gets positioned. We can also check on the front here. My blank right here is almost exactly the same size as the template. What I could do if I wanted to is I could extend the quill out to touch that and reference straight off of this, which would mean our blank would be ever so slightly thinner than this template. I don't know which is better. I think I'm okay with that being ever so slightly shorter. I think I want the bottom of this to align. That makes me happier. We'll go back to where we were. I think that's better. All right, first process is to get this blank round. I'm going to back off my cutter because right now it's in the position it should be for our final cut. Loosen these set screws, back off the knob. Remember, the knob is just a stop. It's not pulling anything back. It will push that tool forward, but it doesn't pull the tool back. And we'll go right about there. And it's just the front and back set screws here that will make tight. Let's get around. So at this point, we are at our final depth. Well, not quite final depth until I adjust that out, but I'm touching the template here, and we're perfectly round here. Everything else is also round. You'll notice that this cuts best if we're cutting along the edge of the tool, not the tip of the tool. So I come in from the side and move sideways. The deepest part of this I need to cut is way over here. So I don't start there. I have to get rid of all of this material before I work on this. So that's next. I'm going to start in the corner and I'm going to work my way back. All right. It's shocking how fast this goes. Now, I'm going to go ahead and extend this out to its maybe not quite final, but close to final depth. And I'm going to approach this slightly different. So right about there. Once we get to our final position, I can come at this from any direction I want. But until we do that, I'm getting a slightly different shape down below than I am from above. So there'll be times where you're cutting in straight like this, and then you rotate it around, and it's no longer touching where it was just touching. Right now, I'm touching the template and my cutter isn't even touching the wood. So until that gets out to its final depth, I can't touch both the front here as well as the wood. It's kind of weird, something you got to get used to. But coming at it from the side here, notice I'm touching the wood, but I'm not touching the template. So I'm gonna continue somewhat in a straight approach. Kind of. All right. I'm going to extend the cutter now, and I'm going to come at it from the front. All right, I'm extended to my full depth now. Yeah, it's going to take a bit of sanding to get that end grain tear out cleaned up. All right, so we still have some end grain pores here that could be sanded through, but for now, since that's just a little experiment, I'm happy with it. To finish this up, we've got to bore a hole here, and we've got to trim our candlestick and bore a hole for the candle. All that also can be done right here on the lathe. All right, over on the bandsaw, I did cut a little bit more off of that tenon than I expected to, but again, we're not building chairs. And on the top here, this is going to take a little touch up on the lathe after we get this mounted in place. But we're going to go ahead and drill the hole here for this piece. And I do expect this to be slightly larger. So after we're glued up, I'll touch that up. It's 5/8 actually. There we go. All right, we'll give that some time to set up, and we'll drill this hole after that has set. I glued this in. It's just ever so slightly off center, and before we drill the hole here, I want to get a nice taper, I guess, leading towards where the center of this is going to be. I may be making a mistake using a gouge for this, but let's find out. Yeah, getting some chatter. Let's get the center of this marked. And now we can drill it. Guess what? Headstock's not locked. Let's set our depth for 3/4 of an inch. And we'll put a little more paste wax on this, and this will be finished. And that's a wrap. Not too shabby.
Okay. That looks
Pause.
cool.